Saddam Hussein. I mean, just say the name and it conjures up these powerful, conflicting images, right? Here's a guy who started as an orphan and somehow clawed his way up to become one of the most notorious leaders on the planet. And even now, years after his death, people are still fiercely divided. Was he a hero who built a nation, or was he a brutal tyrant? So what's the real story here? Well, that's what we're going to dig into. And that really is the question, isn't it? Hero or tyrant? It's so complicated. Was this the visionary leader who dragged Iraq into the modern age, or was he the monster who ruled with pure terror? The truth is, his story is a huge paradox, and to really get it, you've got to look at both sides of the coin. And here they are, the two faces of Saddam. On one hand, you've got the modernizer. This is the guy who took Iraq's incredible oil money and built schools, hospitals, and a powerful sense of Arab pride. But on the other hand, you have the brutal dictator, the man who ruled with an iron fist, started absolutely devastating wars, and terrorized his own people. These two stories are just constantly at war with each other. Okay, so to understand the man, you have to go right back to the very beginning. His journey from a poor, forgotten orphan to the absolute ruler of Iraq, well, it wasn't just a political career. It was a ruthless, brutal climb that was forged in violence right from his childhood. Saddam's childhood was, to put it mildly, incredibly rough. His dad died before he was even born. He was bullied all the time for being an orphan. The stories say that even as a little kid, he carried a steel rod with him everywhere and was not afraid to use it. At age 10, he finally ran away from an abusive stepfather and found a new kind of family through his uncle, the Ba'ath Party. And that decision, joining that party, set him on a path that would change everything. So inside the party, he quickly got a reputation for being completely fearless and violent. So much so that, get this, at only 24 years old, he gets picked for a huge mission, a CIA-backed plot to assassinate the Prime Minister of Iraq. Now, the plot actually failed, and Saddam had to get out of the country fast. But even in failure, he'd made his mark. He was now a man of action, a guy to watch, not just in his party, but for spy agencies around the world. After coming back to Iraq, Saddam's rise to power was fast. And this is where that whole hero narrative really kicks into high gear. It was all fueled by one thing: black gold, oil. See, when Saddam came into power, Iraq's massive oil fields were all controlled by the British. So what was his first big move? He nationalized the entire industry. He basically seized control and announced to the world that Iraq's wealth now belonged to the Iraqi people. You can imagine that move made him an instant hero, not just at home, but all across the Arab world. And what did he do with all that new money? He created an economic beast. To put this in perspective, at its absolute peak in the 1970s, one single Iraqi dinar was worth $3. 3! The country was just swimming in cash, and Saddam was ready to spend it. With all this oil money, Saddam launched these huge social programs that totally changed the country. We're talking free education all the way up through university, free healthcare for everybody. He brought electricity to literally every village in the country. And because of all this, literacy rates just exploded. For a lot of Iraqis, this really felt like a golden age. But, and this is a big but, while he was busy building up the country with one hand, he was tightening his grip with the other. The national hero was changing, becoming someone else, someone who would be defined not by prosperity, but by pure, absolute fear. He supposedly became obsessed with the movie The Godfather. And I don't mean he was just a fan. He studied it. He started dressing like the characters, smoking cigars the same way, and most importantly, he started using the same ruthless tactics as a mafia boss to secure his power. And he showed everyone his new style just 6 days after becoming president. Picture this. He calls hundreds of his own party officials into a big hall. He sits down, calmly lights a cigar, and says he's uncovered a conspiracy. And then he starts reading from a list. One by one, he reads out the names of 68 supposed traitors, men sitting right there in the audience. As their names were called, they were dragged out of the room to be shot. It was all on camera, a terrifying message to everyone: nobody is safe. So now he has absolute power at home, and Saddam starts looking outward. But his next moves, they were just a series of terrible gambles, driven by ego and paranoia, and they would end up bankrupting the very nation that he built. He was terrified of the new Islamic Revolution happening next door in Iran, and he wanted to be the top dog in the region. So he invaded. He thought it would be a quick, easy victory. Instead, He got stuck in a bloody 8-year-long war. It was a total catastrophe. About 1 million people died, and Iraq, which had been one of the richest countries around, was now drowning in debt. So, deep in debt, Saddam starts looking at his tiny but super rich neighbor, Kuwait. Before he makes a move, he has a meeting with the U.S. ambassador, and the message he gets is, well, it's a bit fuzzy. She tells him the U.S. doesn't really have an opinion on Arab-Arab conflicts. Now, how would you take that? Saddam took it as a green light. He thought America was telling him, go ahead, we don't care. But it was a huge, fatal mistake. Because it turned out the United States was not going to just sit back and watch. And that one single decision kicked off a chain reaction that would lead straight to his own destruction. Right, so the invasion of Kuwait leads to the first Gulf War, then crippling sanctions, and finally the big one. The 2003 U.S.-led invasion toppled his regime for good. The final chapter of Saddam's life played out like something from a movie. A man on the run, a wild capture, and then one last defiant stand in court. And the end came shockingly fast. The invasion starts in March 2003. By July, his 2 notoriously brutal sons, Uday and Qusay, are killed. By December, they find Saddam himself. Less than 2 years later, his trial starts, and by the end of 2006, he's executed. Just like that. Decades of absolute rule, all wiped away in a little over 3 years. The way he fell is just staggering. I mean, think about the contrast. This is a man who lived in gigantic, luxurious palaces and commanded a huge army, and he was found hiding in a little hole in the ground, a spider hole, with just a light and a small fan. The all-powerful ruler of a nation just gave up to enemy soldiers without even putting up a fight. What an end for a guy who built his entire image on being invincible. Now, you'd think that would be the end of the story, right? But getting rid of the dictator didn't bring the peace everyone hoped for. In fact, what came next was a whole new chapter of violence and chaos. And it made a lot of people ask a really tough question. Was Iraq actually better off? Many experts now point to one single decision made right after the invasion as maybe the biggest strategic mistake of the entire war. The U.S.-led coalition decided to totally disband the entire Iraqi army. And the reason why that was such a disaster is pretty simple. Just think about it. Overnight, you have hundreds of thousands of trained, armed soldiers who are suddenly out of a job, humiliated, and really, really angry. You basically just created a massive army of angry guys with military skills and a powerful reason to fight back. This was the moment a deadly insurgency was born, one that would throw Iraq into a horrifying civil war for years. Which brings us right back to where we started. He built up a modern nation, and then he terrorized it. He stood up to the West, and then he led his country into total ruin. His removal was supposed to bring freedom, but instead it unleashed years of absolute chaos. So after all this, what is Saddam Hussein's legacy? Is he a hero? A tyrant? You know, maybe the only honest answer is that he's both, and that's what makes him such a deeply unsettling paradox.